Hey guys, what's up? Today I'll show you what I consider to be the 10 hardest strategy JRPGs of all time. Now I know there's a lot of really hard strategy RPGs and some of them will probably not be in this list, maybe because I haven't played them, so these are the ones that I have played. And as usual, no only in Japan games. That means this goddamn prick is not gonna be here. Because that would be my number one actually. Anyway, let's begin! Number 10, Wild Arms Crossfire. Welcome to the game that killed the Wild Arms series for being so goddamn broken. It's a spin-off the developers thought could work as a strategy RPG, but certain penalties, the class system and the mission objectives destroyed it. You have a small party here, but they can attack from afar, so can your enemy. You can switch to some jobs at any time in order to gain the advantage in battle, but it's required to know which ones are best suited for some circumstances. The biggest issue is, it doesn't help reduce its obnoxious difficulty spikes. Even if you're doing the right thing, it's just as hard because your stats suck, the terrain is bad, and your characters are weaker than a fly. Let alone some objectives like escort missions, for example, where NPCs almost rush towards the enemy to get themselves killed. The game's like this because it tried to be creative, but it ended up being creatively stupid. It had so much potential and I really wanted to like it because it looked so cool with a great heroine and terrific concept, but those penalties and convoluted job system completely ruined it. Number 9, this Gaia, Hour of Darkness. Keep in mind I'm talking about the original PS2 version. I don't know if any of its ports or remasters are easier, but the first this Gaia is known for being an annoying grinder, but one that's not too hard to exploit. By abusing the item world and certain characters, you can break it, but of course good luck actually accomplishing that, because I believe the hardest part of the game is precisely that, finding a good way to exploit certain battle mechanics, the equipment and, like I said, the item world. But it just takes a long time and it's tedious, at least for me. Your characters are just too weak and can die sometimes in 1 or 2 hits. Once I got to a point where I was at the proper level for one mission, and on the next one the enemies will be 5 levels stronger than me. Grinding helped me during a while, but eventually it was just useless, so unless you follow the advice of die-hard fans of the game, with a lot of patience that is, it's probably gonna be as hard for you as it was for me. I guess what I mean to say is that you really have to love this game and all of its gameplay mechanics to reduce its difficulty and properly enjoy it. Number 8, Grow Lancer, Wayfarer of Time. I've mentioned this countless times in countless videos, so I'll be brief. What makes some of the Grow Lancer games so freaking hard is the mission objectives. Kinda like in the Devil Survivor games, those didn't make it here but they're honorable mentions, dammit. Escort missions, survive missions, protect this or that missions, that's what makes some Grow Lancer missions quite stressful. Wayfarer of Time takes the cake because it just went overboard with some of them. 80% of the game is actually balanced, very challenging but not really that hard. The other 20% is outright unnerving. In this mission, each of your 4 playable characters needs to defend a flag from a group of really tough soldiers. If one of them is destroyed, it's game over. In this other, you need to outrun and defeat this angel in seconds, not minutes, seconds, or it's game over. And those missions with timers are by far the worst in the entire series. I love this game because it honestly feels so good when you finally beat missions like those, but I have to admit, they still left a really bad taste in my mouth. Number 7, the Agarest Games. So there's various RPGs in this obscure series, but only 2 grid-based strategy RPGs. The The first one and Zero. Zero is the worst out of the two and they complicated the battle system even more, so I don't recommend it. The first one, however, is a great game, but it's also a massive, and I mean massive grind fest. In these RPGs you will have to rely on combos, either by choosing them with only one character or combining them with another one nearby, but they need to be on a specific grid so they can join in the combos. So yeah, you guessed it, for most enemies and bosses, especially bosses, you need to know which attacks, magics or skills are best. The problem is, it takes a lot of time to figure them out during battle, so you'll be dying with certain bosses or winning by pure luck. Right, cause the RNG is kinda messed up here, and quite often some attacks end up missing a lot. It's a cool battle system, don't take me wrong, but even mastering it, you still have hours of grinding left, cause the enemies, especially the bosses, are so overpowered! Zero messed it all up because it made some bosses immune to certain attacks and combos, so there are way more difficulty spikes. I recommend the first two Agarest Games only, but the second one is more of a turn-based RPG than strategy. Number 6. Hoshigami. Another grind fest, and I mean it, since battles from the very beginning of the game are awful. Apart from having its own convoluted magic system, it also has an RAP system. Taking any action whatsoever increases that bar, and if it reaches 100%, you can't even move. So the order of turns can be abused by your enemies when you're facing a lot of them because they can use it too. And this is one of those strategy games where enemies gain experience when attacking or defeating your characters. It works to your advantage that you can access the Tower of Trials to train right from the start, but because of what I said, it's also somewhat pointless. The worst thing of it all is the RNG, above some of the most unfair games I've ever seen. Hoshigami was not a success, and it failed in the market for good reasons. Arc System Works remade it on the DS with several gameplay improvements, including difficulty settings, so forget about this severely outdated version and play the remake on the DS instead. Number 5. Operation Darkness. Developed by a studio called Success, it is an exclusive on the Xbox 360, based on World War II but with vampires, werewolves and zombies. You'll be mostly using your platoon of soldiers, some of them being actually able to transform to werewolves. Most of your enemies will be evil soldiers, dark fantasy creatures and tanks. Maps are extremely big, so prepare to spend an hour or two on each. Fortunately, your characters have a long movement range, but so do your enemies. What makes this game so hard is not only that, but also its unnerving difficulty spikes. First of all, weapons run out of ammo, especially the most powerful ones, like precisely the bazookas you use against tanks, which are usually very far away in the maps, so you gotta send a couple of characters towards them to take them down. And if you run out of bazooka ammo, yeah, you guessed it, you're fucked. Second, most characters have permadeath after a certain chapter of the game, and there's only one guy who can resurrect them. If that guy is dead or undeployed, forget it, reset the game. Overall, there isn't anything complex with Operation Darkness, it's just full of huge difficulty spikes and really powerful hordes of enemies on certain maps. Number 4. Yggdra Union. Released on the GBA and then enhanced on the PSP, either version is just as convoluted. The GBA version, in my opinion, is the hardest though, since the battle system strongly revolves around the use of many different types of cards, which give your characters different strengths and weaknesses. It gives the game a lot of depth, but also a brutal learning curve. So besides knowing which cards to equip, you also have to know which type of character is best suited for this or that map, because there's also a lot of elemental shenanigans here. On top of it all, there's a morale system that I always felt it was very strange. Using an offensive posture increases the attack of your commander and their units, but leaves them vulnerable. The opposite effect happens with a defensive stance. However, I swear sometimes it felt meaningless and no matter what, I still died. And there's a really weird ass permadeath system here, also revolving around the morale bar. There's no way to grind in this game, you have to train your characters during main missions. so I recommend the PSP version over the GBA, but both are ridiculously tough anyway. Number 3. Natural Doctrine. This is one of the most convoluted, overly complex and hard to get into RPGs ever made. It's also on the PS3 and the PS Vita, and it sucks! Not only does it have a really steep learning curve too, it's also pretty bad and unappealing. You control a group of soldiers that fight to find resources for humanity to survive, so they'll explore several ruins full of monsters in order to achieve that, but the entire exploration is the battle system itself as you move around in giant grids. Big enough for all your characters to fit in, but they can also go solo if you want to. They can also hide behind objects or walls and shoot at their enemies or attack up front, but since missions are way too long, there are checkpoints and encampments to rest. However, battles are still active, so you need to use the right skills to sometimes... Man, I never understood this RPG, so I gave up. I can't even explain it properly. This game was so hard when it came out, even Japanese veterans complained about it. An update was there soon after to include an easy mode, but the horrible learning curve was still there. Some RPGs on this list are brutal, but they're worth getting through. Not this piece of shit, forget about it, that's my advice. Number 2. Warsong. Warsong, also known as the very first Lang Racer, is one of the most ridiculously unbalanced games I've played. You have your commanders, which are the main characters, a little bit overpowered, at least most of them, so you can go solo with each or recruit mercenaries to aid you in battle. Once you make contact with an enemy, the mercenaries will fight, but there's a weakness system here. One type is strong against another, and so on. If your commander fights, they'll usually win if they're strong against the enemies, so you'll be fine, but sometimes facing an enemy commander can get pretty ugly, so it's always best to weaken them with mercenaries or magic spells from afar. The big problem with this game is that there's no way to grind, so you have to suck it up and train your commanders as much as you can during the main missions. But against certain commanders or bosses, they're almost useless and easy to kill, so it's a pain in the ass. And to make matters even worse, maps are extremely long here and can take up over an hour to complete. And since there's permadeath here, you'll be resetting the freaking game over and over. If your main character dies, even if everybody else is still alive, it's game over. Yeah, I'm glad the remake of this game changed all of that, balanced the difficulty and made things way better in terms of gameplay. Number 1. Rondo of Swords. The hardest strategy RPG I've ever played is Rondo of Swords, developed by the same studio that made Operation Darkness. 3 times I've attempted to beat it, but each time I gave up more easily. That's right, instead of making more progress on each attempt, I lost my patience. It's by far the biggest grindfest ever, extremely infamous for being outrageously unbalanced. In Rondo of Swords, you take control of a small group of characters against hordes of enemies that are usually way over level than you. It's no simple tactical game though. Here you need to form lines of attack so your character can go through your enemies and allies if they're in the way. Passing through allies buffs you or them or heals you or them, but you gotta have the skills equipped for that. Passing through your enemies obviously hurts them, but sometimes they can block you and completely ruin your whole run. It happens way too often cause like I said, enemies are usually over-leveled on almost every map, and the only way to grind here, something the game never explains to you by the way, is to fight until you're either too hurt or capped, then either restart the mission or retreat. Maps aren't replayable, and there are no extra missions for that. Several other features make this game even harder, like the limited amount of healing items or magic points, and to buy stuff, you need to send one of your characters during an intermission, which makes that character unavailable for the next mission. Fuck this game, man. It's good, sure it is, but it's stupidly brutal for no reason. I'm not sure I'll ever beat it. This fucking game, man, this piece of Oh, that's right, some of you probably think some of these games aren't that hard, right? Let me call somebody just to make sure, absolutely sure. Yeah, hello, is this the world? Well, I called you just to tell you that some people watching this video don't think some of the games I put in the list are that hard. So, hello? They hung up. They probably don't give a shit. Thanks for watching, everybody. Don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends. See you next time!